Yo, yo, Pastor Jeff.
Yeah, baby.
I see you, man.
Yeah.
I see you.
Yeah.
Much respect to the Cleveland Browns. Let me just start off like that. Much respect.
Baby. We headed to the basement, but it's all good.
Grudging respect. Still black and gold all day, even though I got on red and yellow.
Absolutely.
Still black and gold all day, but grudging respect for the effort y'all put in tonight. It is what it is. I got a spot for you on the couch next to me, so Myles Garrett and everybody else can come and come kick it. Come kick it with the Steelers fans now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're gonna kick it and watch them Buffalo Bills do what they do, man. How's everybody doing out there? How's everybody doing?
We see you coming in. Welcome Facebook, welcome YouTube. Alex, Jameson, Janine, Tim. Good to see y'all. So Jeff, just real quick, we'll make this a quickie. This will be a front of show rapid fire. Who would you like to see win now? Who do you think will win? Win it all?
Well, at this point, nobody that I like at all is in there. So I mean, like I said, I'm gonna go with the Buffalo Bills. I would suppose right now, I would have liked even the Baltimore, even though they stole the team from us. I'd like to see Baltimore just because I was really impressed with the quarterback.
Yeah, I wanted to see him grind.
Yeah, so but
I wouldn't mind seeing the Saints do something. I have not been paying attention to them all year. I wouldn't mind. I love them black unis.
I ain't seen them at all. I ain't even
seen them at all. No, I've hardly watched half a game with the Saints this year. Mm-hmm. But I like Kamara, and give Breeze one more go around. I'd rather see him go than like Aaron Rodgers. Sorry, Janine. I'd rather see Breeze than Aaron Rodgers. To be honest.
We got a lot of Aaron Rodgers fans at my job, so but I ain't never been a cheesehead, so I ain't down with
Hey, why is there a rule that all quarterbacks have to be in insurance commercials? Why is that like a rule? When did that become a thing?
All quarterbacks and what's the one? Chris Paul. Chris
Paul. Yeah. I mean,
only basketball player.
When did it become like? I mean, you got Peyton Manning, you got of course Baker, you got Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand when that became such a big thing.
I don't know.
It's odd. But hey, Pastor Tatum, good to see you. Sister Debbie, good to see you. Everybody tapping in. Do me a favor, hit like, hit share. Make sure you share this. We are talking tonight. That was then, this is now. That was then, this is now. We'll be talking pastoral transitions. But before we jump into it, Pastor Jeff, it is Martin Luther King Jr. weekend.
Come on.
Almost at the worst or perhaps best possible time. So what do you think? What's a good way to phrase this question? What are you tired of hearing around the Martin Luther King Day weekend? What are you tired of hearing?
I'm honestly tired of hearing that, the whole, we all need to get together speech. We all bleed the same color. We all, and truth of the matter is it may be true. We all do bleed the same color. But once again, as I've said, even on Facebook this week, without the admission of wrong, these racial conversations are just going to be closed door. And so, I think, we can't get together till there is some type of consideration on our behalf of what has been done and what is still being done in our community and, to our people. And, and then we can sit down and talk. So, I think a lot of people try to take this weekend and turn it into a, que sera, sera, let's all hold hands and sing Kumbaya type moment. But, I think particularly now in this day and age, we really need to, say, okay, step back and say, okay, nah, that ain't gonna work this time, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, I concur with you, and I think we need to devote an entire show, maybe around Black History Month to this. I have several thoughts that we'll have to unpack on another level, another time. One thought is I can't think of another intense wrong such as racial injustice and racial abuse and white supremacy. I can't think of any other wrong like that an entire segment of people feel that the solution is to look past what's actually been done and just talk about coming together, like you said.
Right,
like
right.
I can't imagine like if you my best friend and you like just I didn't do it, but you just bash somebody's head in and beat them all down in the street. And we're just hugging. I'm telling everybody, you're the greatest person ever. You're a good brother. And when that person comes to me and says, "Hey, your boy Jeff bashed my head in," I'll be like, you know what? I think we just need to sit down together and just all come together. I can't think of another instance where that's acceptable. The other thing I've been thinking about, and this is way off base, if only, especially our evangelical friends, if only they would treat racism the same way they treat anti-Semitism.
Yeah. That's
when it comes to anti-Semitic behavior, they want forms, they want laws. I just got an email just before we started the show about a campus program to fight anti-Semitism and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sitting here like, so that sort of ethnic, abuse and mistreatment, and all of the flames that go into that is definitely worth some people's attention, but not this. One thing I would just say is, I don't even like the phrase at this point, racial healing.
Yeah.
Because it supposes that there is two equally antagonistic sides that have equally abused each other.
Right.
And I feel like we have slowly been beaten down. And of course, you know how I feel, Dr. King's words have been Disneyfied. He's literally become like a cartoon character to a lot of people, including Black people. And, nothing more than a quote. Listen to the last 3 years of this dude's life. He's like a totally different person than the one that is preaching on the March on Washington. Absolutely. So I think that's something we need to unpack, man.
And one of the things that I've been hearing more and more, especially over the last couple of weeks, is that in reference to white supremacy or white privilege, is that we have Black colleges, that people get hired of color just because of their color. You always want to talk about the now, but you never want to talk about why we needed these things in the first place.
Yeah. Why does it exist in the first place?
There was a necessity for all these things that made them come into play. It's not, just happenstance that they're there and we're just benefiting off of them.
And that doesn't even touch that. I don't care if you put 250,000 Black kids through college for free. That doesn't even begin to touch the untold tens of millions of lives, hundreds of millions of lives that have been impacted, the wealth gap that is a product of racial economic inequality. You're not even touching it. So of course, I'm the more militant among the two of us. Jeff is still friendly with most people. I'm ready to go to town on somebody. But I think there's room. I think we need to have challenging conversations, but I do believe we as Black ministers, and I said this to a friend, I think I said it to you as well, we're going to have to start holding, especially in this era, some of the brothers, not all, but some of the brothers and sisters from our white brothers and sisters who have conveniently picked and chosen what they want to address and engage, and maybe set an ultimatum like, you are not going to be, not like we're going to exclude you, but we're not giving you as much freedom to promote your cause and your perspective. We might even need some assurances of where you really stand with everything we've seen in the last few weeks. Where do you really stand?
Yes, sir.
Where do you really stand?
And please understand, all of y'all listening, Pastor Todd is definitely the more militant of us, but trust and believe, I know exactly what side of the line I stand on.
Oh, the yo will come out of Jeff. The yo will come out of Pastor Jeff.
Trust and believe. I'm cool. Don't push me.
Cause I'm close. Hey, y'all, like and share this video. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. Don't forget that first Sundays, which, believe it or not, will just be a few Sundays away. We are YouTube only. We really want you all to engage in the YouTube only first Sundays. February 7th will be the next first Sunday. But until then, follow us, subscribe on YouTube, like us on Facebook, IG, Twitter. We got some wonderful things coming up. But before we jump into the main subject matter with Pastor Jeff, I want to shout out our sponsor, Phillips Care Cleaning. We can clean your residential and commercial buildings. The Phillips Care family of businesses includes Phillips Care Cleaning, from cleaning houses to businesses, top to bottom, even carpet cleaning. They take care of the mess that causes you stress. If you have need of cleaning, maybe at your church, maybe at your office building, maybe at your house, maybe you need your garage, they do haul away services. If you're one of the types that got the shed or the garage filled up with junk, you know, call Fernando at 330-219-7916 or visit phillipscarellc.com. Again, that's Phillips Care Cleaning, residential, commercial, indoor, outdoor cleaning and services that will meet all of your needs. All you got to do is call them, and I'm sure they'll take care of your needs. So shout out, big clap for our sponsors.
Hey, Fernando, you take care of the mess that gets rid of our. Can you come get these kids? Will y'all do something?
Bruh. Let me know you got Phillips Child Care. Phillips Care for babies kids. Let me know. Let me know. Hey, before we jump in, shout out to President Reverend Dr. Michael Harrison. I did tear myself away from the game to watch as he brought forth the word for the Youngstown Martin Luther King Day Committee. Jalada Oslam did a wonderful job putting that together. I don't mean to shake no ruffle no feathers, but pandemic or no pandemic, we should never neglect to find a way to honor Dr. King. If they can storm the doggone Capitol during the pandemic, then we can figure out a way to promote our civil rights heroes. And so shout out to Dr. Harrison. He brought a strong word, a convicting word, probably offended some people, but it was all truth. It was all gospel truth. So with that, Jeff.
Yes, sir.
We are inviting everybody. Go ahead. Here we go. Real quick.
Yeah, gotta give it up.
We need a theme song for Jeff real quick.
Real quick. I ain't done it in a couple weeks.
Yeah, about 2 weeks.
I want to give a big shout out to Kat Wade. Happy belated birthday. Her birthday was yesterday. She spent it all day at work. She has come up here from all the way from Orlando just to visit the church a couple times. God bless you. Do appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. God bless you. Happy belated birthday
from the Religiously Incorrect family. Michael Harrison, you need a bodyguard? I got you, bro. I'm getting my baseball bat out the trunk.
You already know. We
will escort you to the city limits, bro. We will get you there.
All day.
Yeah, today it's just me and you, and we are talking pastoral transitions. In other words, what does it mean to be a pastor in one place, a leader in one place, and then you are transitioned and shifted by the call of God, by the call of a church to another place? We're going to pull back the curtain. We're going to talk about it. And everybody watching us right now, I see you. I thank you. Hit the likes, hit the hearts. Let us know you're there. Please know this is a no holds barred. Ask your questions. Throw it at us. If you ever want to know what goes on, how does it happen, as much as we can reasonably say, we going to share.
And listen, we're going to be real. We're going to be transparent. We're going to be honest. We're going to be, please don't take offense, anybody. But you
can be offended. I don't care. I mean, I'm straight. I don't care. It's politically incorrect after all. I mean, so Jeff, you and I have both made a transition from being the pastor of one church to another. Now, like our lives, it's so funny how tight and close we are, like brothers. We have such divergent paths when it comes to our backgrounds. And I think it's good to start there.
Right.
I was basically born and raised practically in the same church all my life. Born and raised, I am as church kid as a church kid can get, not necessarily raised in the churchified world where you're like part of like this church clique necessarily, but I was definitely a pew baby. My dad became a minister around let's see, he was ordained in 88. He actually became a pastor in 93. I served under him as a teenager, became a minister at 19 in that church at Agape, and eventually became a minister and elder and succeeded my father in 2012. By the time I got called to Second Baptist Church in Warren in 2015, I had never known another church, literally never known Sunday to Sunday any other church for some 30 some years. I'd never known 30 years of my life, by my whole life at this one church. You, on the other hand, were raised in church, but you had a journey, if you will. You had a journey.
Absolutely.
Talk about it.
Well, first of all, I was not raised with a church family. I was raised in the hood.
I feel you. No, I'm just saying. I knew you talked about going to church as a child.
Yeah. I mean, I went. My grandmother. My grandmother was a pastor. So,
okay.
I went there. Went to eat the cookies at Sunday.
Right.
I went to cookies.
We all do.
But my father. Both my fathers were. My stepfather and my real father both went to jail. So I had no church background. I started going to church because I was working. I was a bricklayer. I was building brick houses, and I happened to be building Pastor Alton Merle's house. And that's where I was working over there where Bishop Herring stayed. And he invited me to church, and I went out there. I went to the church. Matter of fact, I was in Youngstown. I came up here to Warren to go to the church. And, that's back when, New Jerusalem was bumping. And I mean, from the first service, I was all on it. But even from there, I started church transitions, because when the split, when Loretta Pernice moved, I moved with her. So church splits and transitions just happened to be part of, seemed like just went on with me. So yeah, so that's my little background. So
yeah. Now you served at a couple other churches as a minister, correct?
Yes, I served at I was a deacon and a minister in training at New Jerusalem. I became the evangelist. I was licensed as an evangelist under Pernice and Bronner at that time. I went on to be under Pastor Harrison as a minister there at Union Baptist, and then that's when I took over Divine Assemblies as my first church was Divine Assemblies, which I was at for about 5 years. Upon leaving there, that's when I came and joined with you. Me and you became friends, and went on from there to Beulah and now Progressive. So
wow. And I mean, it's just, you have that experience of seeing different styles, different functions, different manners of leadership, even, different like authority models, in the church, how churches are run. Some, like you said, bumping big, established churches, institutional, non-denominational, Baptist, and so that's just, again, I come out of this bubble of one church, and then I'm called to one of the city's, one of their oldest and most institutional and well-respected churches with an incredibly rich legacy. And I know, and I think it's fair to say that any pastoral change, whenever a pastor, I don't care if a pastor passes away, whether it's unexpected or expected, pastor retires, or a pastor transitions and, for lack of a better term, leaves and goes to assume leadership at another church, it's traumatic and life-altering for everybody.
It is.
For everybody. I remember when I was 10, 11 years old, when our pastor died unexpectedly. He got sick, and they thought he was going to recover, and he didn't. It was a heart attack and an issue, and it just like that. And it affected me the rest of my life. I refused to go look at the casket when I was a child, because he was my hero. I'm an organist. He was an organist at the time. He was my hero. It affected me so very much. And now, of course, I'm realizing and looking back in hindsight 5 years later, how leaving my home church where I pastored and was raised affected me and my family, and how it's affected people who were a part of the church. And it doesn't really matter if it's a big fat mess, some scandal, or if it's the nicest retirement party, whatever, 70 years of service, whatever you want to say. It's still life altering for there to be a pastoral change? What you pastored at Beulah Baptist Church for how long?
Close to 5 years, 4.5 years.
Right. I pastored at Agape for 3 years as a senior pastor. Several of the years as more or less the primary associate and assistant to my dad in a way, kind of casting and taking on. So we both put in some years. I know from my standpoint, maybe we'll start here. I'll ask you, did you ever imagine when you took on your first pastoral situation at Divine Assemblies, or when you got settled in at Beulah, that there would be some other place God would have you to be? And I'm talking at the beginning, not in the middle or the end or stressful times, but
now when I took on Divine Assemblies, you know, I took that on, and I definitely knew there was more.
There's gonna be more. Okay.
I knew there was more. Even at the beginning of that, and you know, just so everybody knows, I did not. We actually closed Divine Assemblies down based upon my work schedule and everything that was going on. That's when I ended up with you. But as far as Beulah, I mean, up until literally, I never thought I would go anyplace else. You know, we had grown that church. The Lord had grown that church. You know, it was good. We were doing good. People were coming. People were joining, you know, weekly. And so it was a great place. It really was. And I mean, I have nothing negative to say about Beulah. I think I had a great 4.5 years at that place.
Yeah. For me, it was a bit different of a culture, obviously being raised in one church. And then, of course, I'm the classic story of the preacher's son who takes over the preacher's church.
Right.
And usually that is a for life position. When you succeed your own parent, mother or father, you're just there. And we were not a part of a denomination, but you kind of felt like, you know, that Kojic church or that non-denominational church or whatever, that usually if the son or grandson or whoever succeeds the father or the mother or the parent, that's just it. Your place has already been secured. You were expected practically to be there. There's no, you know, there's no surprise to very many people. I mean, once you're established, it's who else was gonna be the one. I never even had the mindset that there was anywhere else to be. I started hearing that there could be more, and I wasn't even thinking. I was almost arrogant about, nah, that's for them other cats that always looking for bigger opportunities and people are looking for a bigger pay. And a part of that has to do with how perhaps some things were skewed in my life, how you looked at the so-called career preachers. Like that was not always directly, but sort of inferred that there was a certain purity in whatever station in life you're in, and God put you there. And if you're seeking or looking, or you got a resume, or that there must be some personal intention, some impure ambitions. You want to be a big shot. It took me a while to accept that there could be more, even though that object was really right in front of me and I kind of already knew it, but I was wrestling with it. And I'm younger, so I have all these wild ideas on, okay, well, let's just do all this and like totally upend all church expectations and let's do all this stuff. And how about I just pastor 9 churches at one time and I convince all these people to do all this stuff? It is ridiculous. And then I never saw myself until I got more towards the end that I would go into I want to say traditional, more denominational church and go to a Baptist church when I had been raised non-denominational, sort of a full gospel doctrine my whole life. And so gifts of the Spirit, you know, speaking in tongues, and the church that's calling for me, the church that honestly already had my attention, like spiritually wise, like I kind of already had that unction and feeling and knowledge, was this very traditional conservative church that had some distinct doctrinal differences, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But there was almost an eagerness once I felt comfortable with it, almost an eagerness to get on with whatever God could have for me. So it was hard to imagine at first. Then it almost turned into not an eagerness to abandon or get away from people, but an eagerness like people get an unction to leave the hometown they never left. And I I'll be honest, mentally, maybe that was a part of it. I've been in the same spot in the same city my whole life doing the same thing, and gotta do something. I don't know if that's a part, like, subconsciously. I'm just being honest. I didn't sit here and strategize all this out, but subconsciously, I got to be thinking, maybe I just started feeling stale, and all my friends didn't move to Columbus and Atlanta and down south and and it was just different.
Let me give the audience just a precursor, because you and I both worked together at Agape for those three and a half years you were a pastor. I came along and you made me basically the assistant pastor, and and we had a great run, and we both left literally at the same time.
Within several months of each other.
Literally,
it was going down.
Right.
Now, let's be honest. That was probably bad news for us in hindsight. I'll be honest. Like, at first, I'm like, man, what's these people's problem? And then I started thinking, I'm like, oh well. Oh well, I kind of get it now.
So, I bring that up only to say that when and probably the reason I began to even pray about leaving Beulah was because an opportunity came available at that ministry.
Yeah.
And for me to go back home was something that, I really desired. Now, understand that when I began to pray, I didn't begin to pray about going back to Agape. I began to pray, Lord, is it your will for me to leave?
Right.
And so, regardless of what happened, the prayer was still yes on me leaving.
Right.
So
right.
I just need that to be known.
Yeah, no, I feel you. Let's dive in deep, because there's a process, man, that a lot of people don't know. First of all, churches that have a vacancy, that's what they call it, a pastoral vacancy. That is such a politically incorrect. By the way, okay, I don't want to give no secrets away, but there are websites where you can look at pastoral vacancies, and they run the gamut.
Mm-hmm.
They run the gamut. But for the most part, there is normally, probably 80% of the time, some personal connection or referral that drives who's going to fill that vacancy.
Right.
So, yes, there are lots of just random applications out there, which kind of makes me laugh when I see these postings come up, or I hear that somebody's looking for a pastor, because we both know now on the other side, like, lots of resumes come in from the most random places.
Hey, wait a minute.
I demanded. I never saw them. I demanded to see the other resumes, by the way. And I never saw them.
All of them were the pastor's office drawer. I opened up the drawer. Oh.
Right. Well, when I got affiliated with the church's Facebook page and email, I started seeing some people who were, it's like just some thirsty dudes, man. I'm just being honest. It was just some thirsty, like, literally, like, the way they like keep inboxing a chick online.
Right.
So what? I was waiting for one guy to be like, so what are we? So what are we? What are we? Like, I preached for you. You called me one time. Are y'all still looking? Like, we've seen people randomly show up. Like, I know you've seen this. People.
I'm like, we're in competition here. Why are you here today?
And do people think that they're like gonna like just have like a glow from heaven moment because you showed up, and they're just gonna have a vote like a Disney movie, like right on the spot?
Is that something? Are you supposed to? Now, don't get me wrong. I think I don't think there's nothing wrong with Googling somebody and trying to see their stuff on, YouTube. Because that's who, these are the people you're going up against. But I'm not going to the church to watch you preach.
It's not magic, man. It's so complicated. There are so many spiritual, social, practical considerations. And people literally think this is like some Tyler Perry movie where you just get up in the middle of a service, give a good speech randomly. People are like, who is he? Right. I'm your new pastor. Like, no, it don't work like that at all. at all. So there's a call. I was approached, and there's often mentors involved, or someone or you are the name being floated just amongst people. Right. And how about this one? How about that guy? But then there's a process. So after the call, would you be? And y'all got to know out there. We're pulling back the curtain. It's just as simple as, hey, Pastor, have you ever thought about? Would you even consider? Are you certain you're going to be there the rest of your life? I mean, just you do understand that God is working, God is moving, the Holy Spirit touches our hearts, but there are still just real life conversations that happen here.
My real life conversation before Beulah was a member came up to me and said, I heard you are a good young minister. I heard, would you ever be willing to consider pastoring again? And at this point, I'm like, nah, I'm rolling with Todd. We good.
Right.
I was like, I come over there and preach, but
right.
we good. We got something going on. And, and when the deacon finally did call me, they said, we got our candidates. We know exactly who we want. We're not looking for nobody else, but they told me you were really good. So we like to have you come over here and preach one Sunday.
Yeah.
I think I was gone from Beulah for about 6 months.
Right. Yeah, you was you was on the circuit, Doc. But it's practical, and just because there are practical considerations and conversations does not mean it is not ultimately a spiritual move.
Right.
Okay. Absolutely. God can show you who your spouse is going to be. Brothers, God can show you who your wife's going to be. You still got to go through the process of buying a ring, setting up a dinner, going to see the father if you're old school like that or whatever. That stuff's still going to happen. Again, this is not Disney. It's real life. And so you go through that process. And so let's talk to the professional side. The professional side is, it's like applying for a job. You know there are other candidates. You might know who they are. Because we live in smaller towns where basically both of us were looking from in basically in our own local areas, region.
Right.
Everybody knows each other. It's not like I'm applying to a job in New York somewhere. Everybody. So there's crosstalk. I found out real quick that once it was said that I was a candidate over here, my name's coming up at the beauty shop. My name's coming up at the barber shop. This is being said, that's being said. It's getting back to my members and da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, but there's a process here. And so here's the funny thing. When you are, and for those of you that don't know it, we are certainly not old-aged wise men, but we have both been through this. When you are a pastoral candidate, you are supposed to carry yourself in a professional manner, regardless of what people are saying. And that leaves you between a rock and a hard place, between what people think and sometimes what they already know.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody outside could already know because they had a conversation with a person in a position of influence that you're the number one candidate. You're the guy they want. You still have 6 months to go before they go through all their meetings. You still are called to preach and serve wherever. You are still leaving this in the hands of God. But now you got to sit there and shut your mouth because usually they ask you, please don't say anything.
Please don't say anything, yeah.
Until we have, for all, but you can't control everybody else. So what do you do? And I want to get to Dante's comment in a second, but what do you feel about the professional maintaining silence and discretion and that in between time?
I think it is a very crucial time. It is a very, very, very crucial time because obviously you don't know the end result. You don't know if you're going to be the person that gets picked, but you are in this process.
Yeah.
And so I think the probably the more wise and mature thing to do is at least talk to the leaders. Mm-hmm. Of whatever ministry you're at, talk to and let them know what's going on. But I don't think it's something that the whole congregation, because it becomes chaotic.
Absolutely.
When people are asking you and calling you, and then then you got the You got them backyard mechanic prophets.
Right. Oh man. Knocking on the door, just random.
I don't believe the Lord is leading you to, and they start making stuff up.
Yeah.
I saw you at this place for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
I saw you old and gray in a wheelchair still.
Like at Walmart. Like I came here to buy some bread. What are you doing?
So I think it's a very serious and it's a very delicate time. And we have to be prayerful, and we have to and like you said, you can manage your circle, but the other church, you can't manage what they say and what they put out and how they feel, especially if they like you a lot.
Right.
Especially
if
they like you
don't like you a lot.
Right, yeah, that's true.
Or don't like you a lot. They're gonna make it known. And then if they're talking to the people that you are currently pastoring, because right now we are talking about individuals who are pastors right now, who are pastoring right now. And Alan has a great question too. We'll get to him. Now, don't forget, for every pastor that eventually gets chosen, there are 10 that didn't.
Right.
Okay. And sometimes it stays a secret. Sometimes it doesn't. And you wonder not only how they feel, but if it gets out they were a candidate, how that church felt that this pastor had even a desire. I think that's what messes with people. The fact that you even had a desire to go.
And before we even, let's speak to that, because is it wrong? Is it wrong to have a desire to become, I don't want to say more prominent or better, but just to be led in a different direction?
We have demonized the entire idea of ambition in the church and completely canceled the capacity for there to be pure godly ambition. That does leave the door open for opportunities that may or may not come to pass. Amen. And still trust the fidelity and the purity of the ministry, whether or not you have certain ideas or visions about what you hope to accomplish. And it's okay to have personal vision. How in the world can I preach to a congregation full of folk about a vision they have for their life and act as if I don't have any for my life? And by the way, my occupation happens to be a pastoring. So there's a good chance that vision might include the pastoral ministry. So Dante, and I hope I said your name right, says, from the sounds of things, picking your pastor is like watching the draft and trading picks. Let's be real here. People are hearing and seeing people's preaching abilities, even their image, their reputation, their work. That's what they're seeing. And by the way, I come out of job services, Jeff. For the state of Ohio, I worked in job services for 10 years, which means my job is to work with HR departments for sometimes multi-million-dollar Fortune 500 companies who are trying to hire. And I have found out that there are many, many HR specialists and generalists that know nothing about the jobs they're actually hiring for. Their specialty is parsing job applications and knowing EEOC and all that stuff, but they don't know how to lay brick or weld pipe, or they don't know any of that stuff. And so sometimes they were not the most skilled people. And by the way, whether it's a deacons board, Mark mentioned denominational boards, they're not preachers. Here's the crazy thing. Pastors are never picked by pastors.
Yeah. Okay. Now you go from
shepherd. I mean, we're just saying we've been picked, so we've been in this role. But let's just be honest. Sheep are picking their shepherd, which sounds, we need to bring Bishop Paramore back into this, which sounds completely antithetical to everything we teach and preach about in the Bible. Because that's what's happening, right? A deacon is a deacon. They get in a fight with me right now, which I don't have no fights with my deacons. We have a good relationship, but I'm like, yo, you want to get up here and do this? I mean, are you the pastor? And we never got to that point. But there's a reason they ain't preaching. If they didn't need a preacher, they need a pastor. They wouldn't call for one. But they're calling for one, and they're not one. Never been one. The best they can say is they've been close to one. It's the best. And that's sometimes. So it's like, you know what you want to see. And to your point, it's true. People get big eyes, just like a guy thinks Paramore says sometimes, put it up, Mike. Sometimes we're not even picked by Christians. Tell the truth and shame the devil. I mean, this is reality. Can you imagine how many people have been placed into pulpits based off people who have no relationship with God? I'm not saying that's our situation, but
right.
It's obviously a reality because there's a lot of regret really quick. But there is a practical side. There's a practical side. I'll say to any pastor, you're allowed to have personal vision. I just believe you are. I think you have to handle it wisely, but you're allowed to have it.
And here's the thing, Pastor Todd, just like those who are picking us have preferences,
bruh.
We have preferences too. You got school system, you got expenses, living, all that stuff. We have to make a choice.
Bruh, I'm looking at, do I want to sit in that chair? Does that chair even look comfortable to me? Do I even want to sit in that? Nah, y'all got to do something about this chair. I mean, this pulpit is 10 feet tall. I mean, I walked in, but we walk in with conditions. Then you walk in like a coach. You walk in like a principal. You walk in like a superintendent. What are my boundaries? What can I do? What are going to be the freedoms? And by the way, this is real practical. And I'm not joking about the chair. I can really be like, are y'all going to kill me if I want to move that?
Right.
Are y'all going to jack me up if I decide that this is, it's crazy. And I will say, and I'm going to give a shout out, Sister Dela Cruz, Lady Dela Cruz, Paramore, one of the best advices I heard, and I will shout his name out. I was talking to a son of Second Baptist whose father is legendary, and he's legendary in his own right, Pastor Keith Troy out of Columbus. And he said, I wish that the system of pastoral, candidacies were treated differently. He said, think about it like this. If a church called me, and I'm paraphrasing what he said, it was this great wisdom. He said, if a church called me and said, give me your 3 recommendations because you know who we are, you know us. So they look for a respected pastor that knows the church that's asking, that actually knows the church, the city, the people. Ask me for 3. He said, the funny thing is you can ask me for 3 candidates and I'm probably only going to give you 1 because now my name is on them. My name is on them. And ask 3 pastors to give you 3 candidates and have no more than 9. And you're already going to probably knock out at least half immediately. And most of those pastors won't even give you 3. Won't even give you 3 because now they know both sides. They are pastors. They probably have a good knowledge of that church. Maybe not all the inner workings.
This is good.
But they also know who they're willing to put their name on. Come on, me and you both in the secular world have gotten burned sending somebody to a job, telling them Pastor so-and-so sent you, and then that person screws up and messes up your name.
Yes, sir. Yes,
so
sir.
Definitely, I mean, it's a system. Congregations, laity are not stupid. They are not unspiritual. They are not idiots. They're not just this raving, mad. But there is a distinction between what they know. They know what they want. And sometimes mistakes are made because they think they know what they want until they get what they get. They think they know. And the funny thing is, depending on the church, the person that they're going after for the basis of image or denomination or whatever, they actually, if they were bold enough, would do much better stepping outside of that mold, but they're often not willing to risk it because of the pressure from others. New Birth in Atlanta has to get a celebrity preacher. They have to. Even though there might be some genius out there, God-loving, gospel-preaching, earth-shaking person who just ain't never been on TV before, who might be the right person.
And I want to speak to that just for a few moments, because I think a lot of these churches, even when you go on those sites and, you got to have an MBiv and you got to have, you got to, and I mean, honestly, if you're looking to get that type of church that's going to pay you that type of salary and do those type of things, you somehow have to have these qualifications. Right. But I think a lot of times those ministries are missing out on great candidates who are, who have a heart for God, a heart for the people, and actually could tear the house down.
Oh, and it's done the work, but doesn't have the paper.
Right. Yes, sir.
My biggest tragedy working for the state for 10 years were some of the best skilled, often older, mature, dedicated workers who just didn't have some doggone piece of paper and some company wouldn't hire them. And they kept hiring some guy who sat in a classroom for the past 6 years and don't know jack diddly squat about actually being in a plant or do. And they overlook, and so much great, I hate to use the word talent, but great talent gets lost when you do that. And I know it's tough. And I give Second Baptist a huge amount of credit. They took a 33-year-old pastor from a non-denominational church that was no older than he is, that has no super long legacy like they do. And they trusted the God in me. I had already made certain doctrinal transitions just in my thinking and my preaching that were more in alignment, that it made the transition easy. And I had I think, and if I were to boast or brag on anything, I have a respectful and honorable demeanor towards the atmospheres I'm called to preaching in, till it becomes ingrained in me, and I can balance those worlds of my upbringing versus where I am at. And by the way, a lot of clarity and training, but man, I almost put up a meme, and I had to stop myself because I thought my members would get scared. But I almost put up a meme that said, the saints are always saying, God doesn't call the qualified, God qualifies the called.
Mm-hmm.
And when them saints need a pastor, them same saints gonna say, must have an MDiv or a doctorate to be our pastor. and by the way, no, and I mean no knock. There are some folks, those of you who don't know what an MDiv is, it's a Master's of Divinity. It's one of the creme de la cremes of pastor degrees, for those that don't know what that is. So that's one of the big degrees, takes a few years to get it. And by the way, I'm on a journey, and I think Jeff, you are too. Are you going for a degree right now, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going for degrees, not for ambition's sake, but it gets in the way. And I know it's hard to put it like this. There are some people asking for a degree that they don't know what it means or what a person really does with it. Then there are churches that might have a good staff, ministry staff, people on the staff are already degreed and well-learned, anointed. And by the way, we are never taking anointing and spirituality out of this. We're just talking practicality.
Right.
So they know what they're asking for, and they know if you got it or not. And my predecessor once said, if you don't know what you ought to know, sooner or later, somebody else is going to know that you don't know what you ought to know.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sooner or later.
Uh-huh.
Sooner or later. We did have a question. I do want to hit something. Alan, I always say his name wrong. Irizere Graves. He says, for those transitioning, what advice would you give them about maintenance of their online presence? You know what? This is a new one. I think it kind of falls in the category somewhat of like college students or high school students who might be up for a scholarship or a draft or whatever. And if you know you're up for something, your whole life is online now. My whole life is online. So I'll be honest, if I'm just talking future, if some church out there was thinking about, requesting my interest, and they see how big I am on justice and militant and strong voiced I am, and that's not their flavor, I might not ever hear from them. It might, they or if you're too loose and we both probably are guilty of this, jokey and whatever, you at the party doing an electric slide at your cousin's party and you're doing this, that, and the other, it could come back to bite you. Other people might say he's human.
I think a lot of people, and I think that's why a lot of people outside of this pandemic actually have stayed off of the online, because they're scared of what somebody might see or what somebody might say. But it also will help, because I think now in this day and age, and I know somebody might want to go to Mississippi, and you ain't got the funds nor the time to fly down there to be doing a trial sermon. And to say, it's online every Sunday. Check it out.
Well, that's the funny thing, because back in the day, for those that don't know, that deacon or committee or whatever, they would go slip in somebody's church, to hear them preach. And they would travel. They would literally travel to somebody's church before they even call them for a trial sermon or a candidacy, which is what typically done. For those of you that don't know, a lot of churches, not all, but some churches will ask a person to come and preach for them. And I guess they just, I don't know, they got scorecards. I don't know if they got, I don't know if there's like 6 boxes. He didn't hoop long enough. I don't know if somebody's like measuring your dress, your clothes, can you sing a hymn? I don't know.
Looking at the first lady.
They're looking at the first lady. And we're going to get to that, because image matters.
It does.
People want that perfect family image. They want that guy that looks smooth, that looks good. Does he even look like a leader? Does he talk like, there's so many totally unspiritual things that go into this. But now my entire preaching library, my good sermons and my terrible ones,
right,
are on Second Baptist page. So if somebody wants to scope me out, they don't even have to request that I send them anything, because that's what they do nowadays. Send a DVD, I just saw one that said send a tape. I'm like, send a tape? I feel like that one dude on the Breakfast Club. A tape? What?
It got the toilet paper inside the thing.
Just the fact that you said tape lets me know who you'll probably be calling to your church. You'll be calling a preacher that still has a tape player. But now everything's on. And they can decide, okay, and here's the flip side of that. They already know all the sermons you already preached, so if you preach them again.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a mess, because honestly, and I have revisited material, which is a whole other pastoral conversation we had with some pastors before. Of course, you continue to develop and revisit material, but then you have this idea that they are trying to judge you. Watch this. They are judging a pastor. Thank you, Bishop Paramore, off his preaching.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of beautiful sisters and brothers who can tear up and a true, genuine word from heaven. And I'm not just talking hooping and screaming. They can be in depth. They can be wonderful at expounding upon the word, but that does not mean they were meant to be someone's pastor. They might have been meant to be somebody's professor.
Yeah.
They might have been meant to be somebody's evangelist, as he said. They might have been meant to be somebody's director of Christian education. And you're judging me, not on, and I'll be honest, I wasn't, and you probably weren't either. I wasn't even asked any like real scenario questions. No. We get asked the hot topic questions, like what if somebody tried to force you to marry a gay couple or something?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you stand on that?
Women ministers.
Women ministers. How is it's 2021? How are we still here? How, and the funny thing is, it literally, people, and by the way, the church kind of gives you an idea of their agenda and concerns based off the questions they ask.
Right.
And my church was asking, how do we connect with the community? How will you? They saw how much we did over at Agape. What would you do? And I even talked about, I understand the distinctions between cultures and personnel and focuses and heritage. So I'd probably handle it differently. I wouldn't do all the things, I wouldn't be running around with Pastor Chuck, every other weekend and baptizing people on street corners, like we were doing at Agape, because I had to get that letter real quick. Like, all right.
Pass out old jogging suits.
All right, y'all, we about to ride around with this truck full of dirty toys and pass it out to people and ask if they want to be baptized at their front porch. I'm not going to do that, but they did want to know how I was going to connect with the community.
Right. And so, here's the thing, Pastor Todd, we got 5 minutes left before we go to our rapid fire.
No, we don't. We're talking as long as we want to.
Keep on talking. I don't care. But here's the thing. One thing I did want to mention is that us leaving or making a transition onto another church does not mean we hate.
Let's talk about it.
It does not mean that I have an attitude or I think I'm better than you because I left, and you don't have to feel, you don't have to think of that way about me either. you know, I was the greatest thing since sliced bread when I was there. But
Thank
since
you.
I'm gone.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I want to, let's segue to that. Let's talk about the stress of leaving. We keep talking about going and the jokes stuff. There's a stress and a tension of leaving. We talked about the rumors that start. Rumors, you know, and it's understandable. Nobody wants to feel like someone's leaving them. Then there's this feel like, you know, you're tricking them or you're deceiving or holding back information. Again, because of that professional side, you have to kind of maintain while you're in process. But then there's the almost like, now we have to be enemies now.
Right.
And I'm like, no. And yes, I am doing what I feel God has called me to do. And right now, being at this space in this place is not that future, but it does not mean I regret anything about it. It does not mean you're not good enough for me, but it might mean that it's not about like my arrogance or I'm bigger and better. It could be, now Pastor Harrison just preached a whole sermon with 5 words. He just preached a whole sermon with 5 words. The church is a woman. The preachers know exactly what he just said. The rest of y'all will have to wait for the show. The church is a woman. So anyway, and here's the sad thing. People feel hurt. And when people feel hurt, they may unintentionally harm by acting out and speaking out of those hurt feelings.
Right.
And then there's an expectation. Nobody wants to hurt alone. And when I say hurt alone, I mean actually hurt people alone. So they want you to feel the same way about them,
right?
Because then at least it's reciprocal and they don't feel like villains.
Right. Right.
And I'll be honest, I mean, I had a rough time leaving the church of my birth. And let's dive deep into it, Jeff. I was disappointed in some people and things. I felt like things that had been taught to me all my life about, specifically that were going to come to fruition in my life, and then they did, then it became a problem. And the problem, though, had been prophesied by the people that had the problem. The promise of my life, the whatever, God's going to use you on greater stages. You, Jeff, all of us who are in ministry have been in front of many an altar and told to lift our hands while they give us a word. All of us have had even my own physical father, actual father, spiritual fathers, people who are proud of us, people who see the potential in us, come and speak things to us after a sermon or after a service and just say to Lord, I just see great things for you. You know, there is an expansion in your ministry coming. There's broader horizons. People literally said, I don't know if we'll be a part of it all. Who knows? And then when you say, family, I have something to speak with you about. Oh, Lord. Here. And sometimes people think they're being spiritual. Sometimes people think, and here's the sad thing about it. Sometimes people feel like they are more valid if they keep putting spirituality on what they think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how they feel. So to not feel like they're being carnal or fleshly, they keep saying stuff like you said, I don't think the Lord is saying that. Instead of just saying, I don't want you to leave.
Exactly. Exactly.
Instead of just saying, I'm going to miss you and I don't know what this looks like without you. Or I know you have good ideas about this, that, and the other, but I don't know how I feel about my own capacity to accept it. We start putting spirituality on it. And then, Jeff, comes the rebound behavior.
Yeah.
Let's prove how great we can be without you.
But we all got VCRs, or we all got.
I got my whole collection. I made sure I took my whole DVD collection.
No, what I'm saying, we all got YouTube to watch where you are now.
Yeah,
and to watch where we were then.
I see what I see.
We all can see it, but. So and here's another thing. Pastor Todd. We get to the point where people begin to say, well, you're taking such and such members. No, these are God's members.
They don't belong to me.
These are, I remember that first transition that I talked about from New Jerusalem to Elam Christian Center.
Yeah.
We had a big meeting, the ones who were supposed to be the heads, and we had a big meeting, and somebody said, you all are taking Pastor Alton Merle Sr.'s members. When did he get members?
Yeah.
I thought these were God's members.
And the funny thing is, these are people who would say that when it's not happening.
Right.
These people would say, this is Jesus's church. This is God's church. Mm-hmm. But when it starts happening, then Jesus and God are gone. Mm-hmm. And these are mine. There's very limited. Christian just said, I feel like it should be easier to see someone leave and grow in what they do. I think for some people, there's a genuine pride. I think other people are, the best word I can think of it, they're just conflicted. They are proud, but it's just like watching a great talent leave your city, or a great person in your family finally get that degree and they're able to take that job somewhere. For them to gain, someone in some essence has to lose something.
Right.
It's just a reality. Okay, I've had people in my church, my life, whatever, to take a job, you've got to go, which means our buddy Tony, we can't go have wings every Friday anymore.
Right.
But you got to go do that. Now the answer is, hey man, go be homeless and live in a cardboard box, and don't take care of your family so that I can still have wings with you.
Right.
You know, and so it's a conflict, and I'm not demonizing, but I'll be honest, I was disappointed in how many people I realized I was only an anointed vessel as long as I was their vessel.
Right.
And to me, there was a phrase that came to mind, and you can unpack a little bit if you'd like. What is our real capacity for what we call kingdom mindedness? Because everyone talks this kingdom stuff, but kingdom really means that this is going to eventually move beyond your church.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things, matter of fact, the title of this message, That Was Then, This Is Now, came from when you came. That my last sermon at.
That was your last sermon.
That was my last sermon. That was there. And one of the points that I made very clearly was, and I talked about how Moses had died and Joshua had to take over. But the point was that what we're not going to do is talk about Moses. You know, Moses done a whole lot of good stuff while he was there.
Right.
Moses done a whole lot of, getting the people over the sea, getting the people through the wilderness, and getting the tablets and all that stuff. Moses had some great days, and we had some great days with Moses. But the fact that Moses is gone does not mean that the church ends.
Nope.
It means that somebody else has to come in and now take place, and we're going to rejoice over who comes in, but we're also not going to degrade and put down those who are leaving.
And you don't have to, try to blow out my candle to make yours shine brighter. Right. It needs to stand on its own 2 feet. And I mean, I know we're talking very practical, but let's just be honest, it's very practical. And for people who are sitting here watching two preachers talk about the practical side, please go back to when you went through transition and change in your church, and the very phone calls and text messages and visits and conversations and salon gossip and everything else you had, because y'all wasn't having 24-hour prayer meetings either. Matter of fact, prior to me being called the second, things had got intense, and there was just a difficulty going through the process until they called a few congregational prayer meetings and stuff. Now you can say you should have been doing that all along, and sometimes you don't know how far people are going to go. Right. And it's genuine feeling. There's no villains here. There's no bad people here. People have genuine feelings, and I think even the people, to speak to Alan's question, most times the people understand how grave this situation is, because even though it's a strange dynamic of sheep picking a shepherd, the people usually take it seriously. Yeah. And it's hard. And people can give you a manual and a book, and you can have a bishop or a moderator or a council or whatever. But just like raising kids, there is no real manual for this. You can give me advice, but every church is different. You really do have to worry about people in the church and what they'll think. Yes, there are really people who will throw their support and their money and their talent and their continued membership, but behind getting their way. There are people who will back off and suddenly become less involved if the person they thought they should have, or the church is leaning towards a person they're not wild about, and they sit back and play, well, I'm going to just observe for a while. I'm going to just sit back and see. Yeah, they'll come into you in the parking lot and tell you, I just been watching you. I ain't really saying nothing. And I usually do this and I usually do that. But right now I'm just watching. And Alan asked the question, Mike, based on your experiences, what advice would you give churches to help membership with pastoral transitions, I think he meant to say. I would say get seasoned, wise pastors involved who you trust, preferably from your area.
Absolutely.
And I think there's this tendency to want to keep it like this super secret process. And I think it does need to be discreet, but you have to trust somebody, because honestly, you might need some outside perspective. Some churches you've been under the same pastor for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. You don't even know what the outside world looks like. You really don't. You might see trends and all, but you probably don't know how they got there.
And then when you're dealing with, especially with Baptist churches, a lot of these Baptist churches literally go 3-4 years without a pastor.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of them go, and the deacons in this time have literally began running the church.
And it's a burden for them, by the way, and it's stressing them out.
It is. But now you come in as the pastor, and now it's this, You know
what I was told? I won't say who said it. When I became the pastor, a wise pastor mentor of mine said, you need to find out who the pastor is.
Right.
Because you ain't it yet. You need to find out whoever it is that it might not even be the head deacon. It's probably not, but there's somebody who is so influential, who most people trust, who, whether they're the loudest voice or not, sometimes it's the loudest voice. Sometimes you have like just somebody always got to talk. Sometimes it's not the loudest voice. But find out who the pastor is, and you at least need to get to know him. You might even have to kill him. But I mean, I got the wisdom. I mean, in all seriousness, I got the wisdom. Like you understand that this church, and by the way, one sister said to me as we were approaching our 100th anniversary, she said wisdom to me in our church. She said, while you're always recognizing all the pastors that pastored this church, don't forget all the members who carried this church, including the times of turmoil between the times that we had a pastor. Because some faithful women and men, a whole lot of times women, while we still talking about women in ministry, are the ones who literally were the glue of these churches while they were going through pastors. They were the glue. Their money, their devotion, their time, their prayers. And then as soon as we get a new pastor, we kick them all to the side and the pastor and deacons take over and do everything. So I thought that was really wise. But so that's a disappointment. And the last thing I'll say before we bring in Mike for a little rapid fire. And by the way, we want to open up the last 10 minutes or so for questions. I'm going to do another acknowledgement of our sponsor, but I want you to ask a question. If you have a question, ask a question. I really do mean you can ask me anything. I'll tell my story first, Jeff, and I'll ask you. Have you ever, when you were doing a transition, had to tell somebody, no, you can't come with me?
Yes.
I did too.
Yes.
For various reasons. Some because it might not be a healthy situation for them.
Right.
Some because it might not be a healthy situation for me.
Absolutely. And some for both. I mean, you knew what the flavor and what the protocol, all those things were at this church. Now this new one you go to, it's not the same. It's just there are things that need to happen, and it took all 4.5 years to get this church where it was. So it's going to take that long to get this one. So right now wouldn't be good for either one of us, because you're going to be frustrated. I'm going to be frustrated that you're frustrated. So now the best thing for you to do.
And I've got the answer for you. Because when you come into a church and bring a few people with you, that new church that you have come to pastor, you brought some people with you. Now you have to answer for them. You have to be the bridge for them, the us versus them stuff, or them his people.
Yep.
And I had some families that came alongside, and it's been, any church family has struggles. A lot of churches have struggles with, what do you call it? Not affiliation, that's the word I'm looking for. Acclamation and really bringing somebody in to the fold. For a while, there are the people that called me. And here's the funny thing, by the way. the people that chose and prayed about coming with me from Agape to Second, and the people who started coming off the street and just starting to check out the church, I had to realize they were not the ones who called me.
Right.
The ones who called me were the core people in that church. They're the ones that called, prayed, maybe voted, in our case, voted, and felt that the Holy Spirit had guided their hearts, that core church. So if I bring 6 families with me, them 6 families didn't vote me in.
Mm-hmm.
And if 50 new members joined in the first year, they didn't ask for me to come. So I do have to be, and I try, sometimes we fail, sometimes we disappoint people's expectations, but I do have to be mindful, because here's what the danger of the new crew that comes with you. The new crew wants you to do everything that they would do with you where you were at.
Right, right, absolutely.
And in my case, big culture shock, jamming, guitar, stringing, rock and roll, Agape, to him and choir. By the way, plenty of room to progress, which we have in amazing ways, but there's a journey you go to get there. And people were literally saying things like, oh man, you're going to flip that place upside down. Are we going to be? No, we're not. I'm going to get up here and sing hymn number 135. And we're going to do this doxology. That deacon's going to pray for 5 minutes. She's going to give a testimony. I'm going to preach. And then when I feel there are opportunities for change and transition, some things they're hungry for. Some things are like, man, we've watched other people progress. We know what we could be. You have tension. We don't want to go too far. Please preserve, keep. But you see, like, oh, we brought you here because you're young. We brought you here because we'd like to see some newness. But I just can't run in there, do a backflip over the pulpit, put on a Michael Todd outfit and start rapping my sermon.
Well, see, that's one of the things that I lost and kind of messed up at when I took Beulah over, is because I had so many new ones coming in and so many ideas, and I think I incorporated them so fast.
So quick,
and
yeah.
Don't get me wrong, it ended up being good, but I lost a lot of the core people who were already there because, and so going into progressive, I've toned that back. I've learned to accept those hymns. I've learned to accept those, that type of it. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I'm not going to go in there, like all this is about to change right now off the bat.
Right.
But here's the thing, though. And I just talked about it a couple months ago, Christmas, whatever. When Mary got pregnant, she went and embraced Elizabeth, who was already pregnant. And so when we talked about how even in transition, the old has to embrace the new. And, and if you're pregnant with potential, and you already getting with somebody who's pregnant with potential, that's just gonna make things better when they come together. And so you have to have that kind of like bridge that thing together.
I am a living testimony, and I would encourage, it's not everybody, not all the time, but being the younger preacher guy who came from outside of a traditional Baptist tradition, obviously, really from a radically, in some ways, different church. Don't believe the hype that all traditional or denominational churches are old and stale and won't accept nothing.
Right.
I am a living witness that if you walk with honor and respect, and trust me, change is never easy, no matter how kind you try to be about it. You see things that need to adjust. I have taken Second Baptist on a roller coaster, and they have ridden it. And good for bad. And by the way, you could be Jesus and become people's pastors, and you were going to lose some members.
Absolutely.
And you were going to gain some members.
And just to that end, just because we are both Baptist pastors, don't think we can't go to some of these Pentecostal acting churches.
Oh, I'm a roll on the floor.
We can shit about 100 with the best of y'all.
Listen, I'm a roll on the floor, walk them pews, and keep the back door out and come back.
Yes,
if
sir.
the mic go out, I got a backup in my jacket. I got a backup mic in case the mic goes out. I mean, and yeah, I mean, we come with it. And so we live in a more multicultural society as it concerns the church. Denominations are still strong, but do not believe the hype. Sometimes even a traditional church that we think is old fashioned and people just leave it for dead and them old folks, sometimes it just takes the right person, the right spirit to bring about. And by the way, according to their pace and nobody else's.
Right. That's it right there.
They will come to, and maybe they are meant to occupy a certain space in the city, a certain ministry, a certain way. Everybody can't be jumping off walls in the dark with strobe lights going off.
Right.
By the way, I found out at Second Baptist as we get to the end here, there are a great deal of young adults and even teenagers and middle-agers that are just fine singing these hymns with us.
Yep.
Matter of fact, there are some people that we thought were going to go to whatever the hype is. They don't mind just going to church.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. Some of us chasing too hard, like too many gimmicks. If you don't sing that hymn, some of them are hungry to hear grandma's hymn.
Mm-hmm.
You singing everything but what they grew up on, and they actually recognize. They don't know all this Todd Tribbett stuff. I mean, there's a bunch of people going with that new stuff, and you can balance. In 1 week, we did a song from the 50s, song from the 80s, song from this decade. You know, you can balance. So we appreciate everybody's comments. Pastor Jeff, any last points?
Great show, man. I enjoyed
any final questions? And we want them to be specific to pastors. I saw your question, Joe. We want specific questions for the pastoral process. Anything we can answer before we go off. Mike, you want to come in and talk to us a little bit about what you feel? Big Mike popping in as we slide out and finish up. Man, tell us your perspective on what you heard tonight.
I couldn't do
it.
Be a pastor or make a change.
Both. I mean, be a pastor. I mean, you know, big responsibility, a lot going on. Honestly, I don't like people that much, so I couldn't do it no way.
I don't either.
If you call me at 3 a.m, tell me your son is in jail, come pray for him. I'm like, well, he'll be there at 10 o'clock when I get up. So
right. Well, believe it or not, that's kind of stuff we have to say, to be honest.
But yeah, you know, hey, big ups to you guys, man. I respect you guys for what you do, for all you go through, you know, and through it all, you keep pushing. You keep pushing. And, you know, I can really tell that you guys have passion for people and passion for what you do. So yeah. Big up to you guys, man. I don't have any rapid fire questions tonight. Sorry, y'all. Next week, though, I'll be on it next week. I had a rough week with work.
That's all right. That's all right. Let's pause for acknowledging our sponsor one more time. From the Phillips family of businesses, Phillips Care Training are the proud new owners of High Street Fitness at 277 South High Street in Cortland. They're running a special for the new year. It's still technically the new year. It feels like 2021 has already been like 6 months long with the whole insurrection and civil war. But they have New Year's specials. Visit their Facebook page at High Street Fitness or call Mike at 330-984-7632. Again, Phillips Care Training, High Street Fitness, 277 South High Street in Cortland. Go get that gut taken care of. You know what I'm saying? Go get them love handles handled and let Phillips Care help you out with it. That's pretty good, right? Get them love handles handled.
That's their new slogan, right?
That's their new slogan. I want my royalties. I really appreciate this conversation, and I like and I'm sure my church is fine. I love the ability to be able to talk transparently about our journeys. The pastoral, unless you have private office conversations with pastors, this is something that's almost never talked about.
Right.
And I got some pastor friends that have some horror stories. I have one buddy that I met through convention that the church found out he was a candidate and the choice of another church, and he was living in a church, you know, the parsonage, whatever, a house. They were shutting off his cable, his electric.
Wow.
His utilities. And you know, awkward, Jeff, I just ask, I know you've had this. It's endearing, but it's awkward at the same time when people say things like, I hope you never leave. You're not going to leave, are you?
Right.
You're not going to leave us, are you? I hope you never leave. Nobody ever wants to.
And I've had pastors say, you know, you got over there. Don't leave him now. You give him a couple years now. And then you also have the ones, and this for me, I know me personally, still have members who call you and say, you're still my pastor.
You're still my pastor.
And that's endearing. Is sometimes it's heartbreaking because, you know, in all, you have another pastor, or you have somebody else who you're under, or, you know, I still want you to do my funeral if something happens to me, you know, things of that nature.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I think that, you know, some people, you're just going to be their pastor for life.
Right.
And you might not be their pastor for life, but you're going to love them for life, and you'll still talk to them. But, at some point or another, they have to accept who their pastor is.
And you have to make them accept it.
Yeah.
You have to make them. You have to say, look, I'm not going to handle this. Have you talked to your pastor? Have you done this? But again, then there is, we're both young, Jeff. So sometimes we get the whole, y'all ain't going to be there long. We know you're going to leave.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to be busting nobody out, but, I'm not even thinking about that.
You know what? I do have a question.
Okay.
How do you deal with the situation if you're a pastor at a church and you see your potential, okay, but you can't reach your full potential at that current place?
For me, I think that has to be handled very wisely, as far as, first of all, trying to be prayerful. And like I said, we also often demonize ambition, but I have been very clear in my teaching recently, and I'm talking to myself sometimes. While the Bible also tells you not to think more highly of yourself than you ought to think, it also advises you not to lower yourself unnecessarily, and to think what the Bible calls sober-minded, which I say think balanced about yourself. And let's just be honest, man. If you feel like LeBron, you don't belong on a minor league team. Now, ultimately, it's God's call. And you know what? I'll be honest. I'm not saying this because either of us are this, Jeff. I'm not saying either of us are this. Everybody watching, Pastor Todd is not saying that either of us are all that in a bag of chips. But I will tell you, small churches deserve great pastors too. The hood deserves phenomenal preachers too. Old traditional. So that's something I had to tell myself. Like, well, am I just going to try to? Because you're trying to fight this thought that you're supposed to be climbing some corporate ladder. Because as quiet as it's kept, that's how people treat you. And by the way, when you think pastors have ambitions and they just want the biggest thing, the culture is what pushes this. The culture pushes this. All these little side comments, all these little "you too big for this city," and all this "I see you on big stages," and "I don't know why you ain't on TV yet," and da 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 da. We ain't sitting there in the mirror talking to ourselves saying this stuff.
Right.
I recall when my first pastoral anniversary, and I had, matter of fact, I had Bishop Paramore come preach for me, and Bishop Paramore, Bowie, and I think Harrison too. But Paramore said something very important that I never forgot. He said, sometimes, matter of fact, he asked, he said, how many members from Divine Assemblies? And because his church came, so he brought 1 million people with him.
Right,
so
right.
I think about 18 people from Divine Assemblies raised their hand or whatever it was, and I'm looking around. But he said everybody, he said sometimes you're called to be a big fish in a small pond. And it made so much sense to me. And I think oftentimes we overlook that like you said, small churches deserve good pastors, good people. There are still some great people in small churches who need the word. And outside of everybody shutting down and trying to go join with somebody else, there's still some churches that are just not going to shut down.
Correct.
Going to be there.
And just because I could do it doesn't mean I'm called to it.
Right.
I might be able to function at some church with 1,000 members. I might be able to. Who knows? But we might have to do a part 2 to this, because there's other practical considerations when it comes to the pastor's personal growth. Because I'll give you a perfect example. I'll be transparent, religiously incorrect. I'm still a jack of all trades. Jeff knows that. I'm still a jack of all trades in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
at some point, you might start to think to yourself, maybe because of age, maybe because you cannot focus as you ought to, I've got to create the atmosphere or get in the atmosphere where I don't have to feel responsible for it all, for my own sanity, not for my ego.
Right.
Not for my ego, but for my sanity. Then it becomes, what about my family? What about my livelihood? If this is what I do for a living, which for me it is, I've got to live. What if I cannot live? I got children to feed.
Right.
I know somebody gonna pop on here and say, "Go get a job." They're also gonna be the people talking about come to the hospital at 4:00 in the morning.
Right. And let me just jump in there.
Use your personal time for funerals.
Just let me jump in there because getting a job is because at some point I want to quit.
Thank you.
I'm at a point I don't want. I got to be at work tomorrow from 11 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night.
And complaining, Mike. He complaining right now, Mike. That was a undercover complaint. Mike
ain't that kind of foreman. He can't do nothing about it, but good. But truth of the matter is, at some point or another, I want to be a full time. I want to be able to just focus on preaching and teaching and going to the hospitals and doing jail ministry and all that stuff. Right now, with the job, you can't. And you cannot, I don't care who, you cannot be that pastor that the church needs and desires the way that they really should with a full-time job. It's just.
Especially if they're expecting it.
Right.
Especially, and some churches might not want it because they want you to be gone half the time.
Right.
So they can keep putting the table back where they found it and you keep moving it.
And they don't got to pay you that much either. So.
Right. Yeah, hey, so I mean, go ahead.
Did you guys hear the comment? I don't know if it was a senator or somebody was praying in Washington. At the end of the prayer, he said, "Amen, a woman."
I saw it.
What was that all about, man?
I'm disappointed. I heard it. He at the end of his prayer, he said, "A man and a woman."
Right.
First of all, I just think that's asinine and stupid, because amen, amen, AMEN is not a man.
That's okay.
So it's stupid. Right. And all it did was give fuel to people who go into how crazy the liberals and the whoever's, and they are ridiculous sometimes. They are absolutely ridiculous.
Wow.
So he was trying to make some point. He was trying to be politically.
But he was trying to be politically correct, but he was being grammatically stupid.
Yes, that's just stupid. Amen means I agree. So you just changed the whole word of what it really
means. I'm a woman. I'm a female.
Yeah.
Which to me, I feel like if you're that progressive, that's offensive, because if you're that progressive, then you don't even believe in genders like that.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're as progressive as you claim to be, you're not even into them, and they. A us. A whatever your chosen identity is.
A question mark.
Yeah, a question mark. So I thought that it's just stupid and foolish, personally. And it was a black dude, like a black church guy. Right. Emmanuel Cleaver, I think.
Wow.
No, that's the dead guy. It was somebody.
We had no questions.
I don't think we had any relevant questions tonight. Sister Dela Cruz did say one church found out their pastor was leaving on his Facebook page.
Hadn't even told the church. Wow.
Hadn't told the church. You know what's sad? And I'll end with this. No matter how you tell them, no matter how you announce it, you never did it right.
Never.
That's what I went through.
Never.
You didn't do it right. I went back after I heard that, watched the DVD, tortured myself watching the DVD. And I'm like, then I went through the meetings, when we met, the dates. I'm going through all this stuff. I'm like, how did I not do this right? But you got to remember, it's feelings in that.
You remember, I tried to do everything as right as possible. Everything. I mean, I waited till papers were signed and everything, and it still didn't work out right, and I still didn't do it right. So
no, you did it right, Jeff. Don't make me start a whole half hour. You did it right.
We better cut.
No, I got to say it. We'll have to talk about when pastoral service go wrong. But I appreciate this conversation. I hope you all watching at home appreciated this. We want to peel back the curtains, and you are free to leave comments, even about subjects that we haven't touched on yet, or questions.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to do an Ask the Pastor show and ask people to put some questions out there. And it can be just, why do y'all do this? Why y'all do this? Why does church do this?
Show.
I'd love to answer that.
Ask do that.
And we're gonna tell you whether you like it or not, what's up. So Mike, we appreciate you. To our sponsor, Phillips Care Cleaning and Phillips Care Training, to all of our viewers, our loyal viewers, please remember, we are Coming back to you every week. We will be first Sunday in a woman. A woman. And on YouTube will be first Sunday. And our guest is confirmed, by the way. Our guest is Pastor Juan Rivera from Victory Christian Center in Coatesville. My man, I'll save his joke for what kind of preacher he is. He always tells us what kind of preacher he is. It's his preacher joke, so I'll let him tell it. But my good friend, Pastor Juan Rivera from Victory Christian Center in Coatesville. We will be kind, Jeff. We might have to be on our best behavior.
Hey,
no, I'm saying we got to treat him right. We got to run him through the ringer.
We got to. It's common courtesy. We got to.
We got to act a fool, man. We got to make you want to log off. No. But we appreciate all of you. Thank you for watching. Anything else y'all want to say?
Hey, woman.
Hey, woman. Hey, celebrate Martin Luther King Day. I'm doing a broadcast at 6 o'clock called The Wisdom of the Elders. Watch that at 6 o'clock tomorrow. Elder Ronald Fowlis, Warren's hero. Our father in the pastoral ministry. Mr. Sonny Morgan, Pastor Stanford's own at Progressive Baptist Church, longtime advocate and union leader, and Sister Irene Reed Jackson, the former First Lady of New Freedom Missionary Baptist Church and one of our sainted sisters from Second Baptist Church. Y'all tune in tomorrow on Second Baptist Facebook and YouTube.
I'm doing a podcast at work.
What's it called?
Call off. Just call off.
Call off for the King. Call off for the King.
Martin Luther King Day. I ain't coming. Hear ye. Come one, come all.
Hit that theme music.
Please, y'all.